We've got our very first trailer for Disney's live-action remake, Peter Pan and Wendy, including our very first looks at characters, settings, and iconic moments from the original movie. Let's take a look. Peter Pan and Wendy is the next installment in a now very long line of live-action Disney remakes, and another geared exclusively towards Disney+. This time round we set our bearings to Walt Disney's 1953 animated classic, Peter Pan. The trailer opens with our introduction to Wendy on what appears to be the shores of Neverland. Wendy is played by relative newcomer Eva Anderson, whose most prominent role to date was as the young Natasha in 2021's Black Widow. The Lost Boys get introduced to us next. Notably, these are slightly different takes than that of the original animated characters, which saw the boys dressed in animal skins. Assuming that Disney has taken a less gruesome and less controversial route this time round, the Lost Boys now appear as stowaways dressed in natural rustic garb and tattered clothes. I honestly think this fits the characters quite a bit better, as they are literally lost, dressed in whatever odds and ends they've found on their island over the years. We also have a few girls part of the Lost Boys this time round, but thankfully the group is retaining their name instead of being named the Lost Children or something silly like that.
Are you
Lost Boys?
Every last one of us. But you're not all boys. So?
Next is our introduction to John Darling in his iconic top hat, round glasses, and bed shirt, taking huge cues from the original Disney version. A few brief shots see Wendy and the Darlings exploring the Neverland abode of the Lost Boys, showing a more homely take on their little civilization. I really like the set designs here. Next up, we get our first look at total newcomer Alexander Maloney as Peter Pan, who takes on a fairly traditional depiction of the character in green, earthy clothes. Really looking forward to seeing what he brings to the character. Of course, we get a great look at the iconic sequence where Peter arrives at the Darlings' London home and whisks them away to Neverland, including that classic image of the characters standing atop Big Ben and flying off into the London night sky. We then see the characters flying over Neverland, where they're greeted by mermaids and, of course, pirates. A couple more sporadic shots show a few more glimpses of the previous scenes, and we even get to meet the Darlings' gorgeous family dog, Nana. During this sequence, we also get our first look at Yara Shahidi as Tinkerbell. Of course, a very different interpretation of the character here, a far cry from her typical white-skinned, blonde-haired depiction. It's sure to get a certain subset of the audience into a manufactured fit of rage, but she clearly looks terrific, and I am so keen to see what Shahidi brings to the character. A short flashback sequence reveals what is likely some scenes from Wendy's childhood, showing that the movie is going to dive a little deeper into the history of the Darling family. We've been promised that this movie will have a slightly larger slant towards Wendy being the main character, and the trailer alone does tend to put more of a focus on Wendy than Peter. So it'll be interesting to see how this movie explores this. We then get a few shots of the Native American tribes in Neverland. I'm very happy to see that these controversial characters haven't been chopped from the movie for good, but have been given a more truthful and less problematic edge, free from the stereotypes of the animated film. After a few more sporadic shots of the Darlings and the inhabitants of Neverland, we finally get to meet our new Captain Hook, portrayed of course by Jude Law. This again is another interesting take on the character. He's not as extravagant or flamboyant as his animated counterpart, and notably is lacking his large iconic hat and long flowing black hair. But these are certainly elements that could come into play at some point during the movie. He could put on his captain hat while he's on the pirate ship, and most likely the black hair is a wig, as we've seen in previous versions of Peter Pan in the past. I am, regardless, a little underwhelmed by this introduction, but I am very keen to see what they do bring to the character in the full movie. The trailer rounds out with a few more action shots and closes off with a brief snippet from a pirate ship battle between Peter, Wendy, and the pirates on a floating pirate ship, showing that we can expect some pretty large-scale battle sequences. In all, this one looks pretty decent. it's clear at this point that Disney is certainly taking a cheaper route for their Disney Plus live-action remakes. The kind of blockbuster quality that we expect from these things on the big screen isn't exactly there in a project like this. It almost feels like a slightly higher than Disney Channel budgeted Pirates of the Caribbean light, and visually it does look a little bit bland. If this turns out anything like last year's Pinocchio, we just know that there's going to be shortcuts galore, not only visually, but narratively too. I do love the designs here, and character iterations look really great. We've seen so many Peter Pan iterations over the years that it's hard to do too much here that hasn't been done before, while staying closer to the original Disney interpretation, which always has to remain key with these remakes. But the movie seems to have certainly found ways to distinguish itself by bringing in new interpretations alongside that iconic iconography. I always say that this is the best way to do one of these movies, so fingers crossed they do pull this one off. Peter Pan is of course one of Disney's most iconic properties, and one I have loved since childhood, so I'm certainly looking forward to checking this one out. But given the trailer's somewhat underwhelming nature and Disney's track record with these Disney Plus originals, I'll be going into this one with my expectations tempered. But how about you? Are you excited for Peter Pan and Wendy, and what are your thoughts on the trailer? Of course, as always, join the conversation down below.